Chapter 1. The Fire Inside. Daniel was 34, a successful consultant on paper, a man with a good apartment, a gym membership, a smartwatch that buzzed every morning at 6. But he rarely listened. Not to the watch, not to himself. He lived in a city of speed. Everything moved: emails, traffic, opinions, people. But Daniel felt still, not calm, numb. He had learned to survive, to meet deadlines, to smile on calls, to deliver results. But somewhere along the way, he'd lost something deeper: conviction, clarity, control. One night after another day he couldn't tell apart from the others, Daniel sat on his couch, phone in hand, scrolling endlessly. The algorithm served him dopamine, noise, rage, until one video cut through it all. A voice said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Marcus Aurelius. Daniel paused. That wasn't just a quote, it was a challenge. One that didn't yell at him to hustle or grind. One that didn't promise 6 steps to success. It just asked him to take responsibility. He looked it up. Marcus Aurelius, the emperor who ruled Rome, yet wrote journals to himself, reminding himself to stay humble, calm, just, despite the weight of the world. Then he found Epictetus, born a slave, beaten until his leg snapped. Still, he said, "You may chain my body, but my mind remains free." Daniel kept reading, kept digging. The deeper he went, the quieter he became. He realized he had built a life around comfort, around avoiding pain, around controlling everything, except himself. That night, he didn't post a transformation. He didn't make a list of goals. He did something smaller, more dangerous. He sat in silence and faced himself. He wrote on a piece of paper, "No more excuses, only action." The next morning, he woke up early. He didn't feel like it. He did it anyway. He trained. He read a passage from Meditations. He took a cold shower, not to punish himself, but to remind himself he was alive. That was the beginning. Chapter 2. The First Challenge. It had been 7 days since Daniel started living by his new rule. No more excuses, only action. He was waking up earlier, eating better, reading the Stoics every morning. His world hadn't changed, but he had started to change inside it. Then came Monday. It was raining, hard. The kind of rain that cancels plans, silences alarms, and whispers, "Stay in bed." Daniel sat at the edge of his mattress, soaked in gray light, watching the storm outside. His gym bag sat by the door, cold, wet, uninviting. For a moment, the old Daniel returned. The voice in his head was calm, seductive. "You've worked hard this week. You deserve rest. It's just one day." He reached for his phone. The temptation was to scroll, to delay, to postpone this battle with himself until the skies were clear again. But then he remembered something Epictetus had written. It is not events that disturb us, but our judgments about them. The rain wasn't the problem. His thoughts were. So he stood up, slowly, deliberately, as if reclaiming a piece of himself. He put on his shoes, grabbed the bag, and walked into the storm. Every drop of rain was a small resistance. Every step a vote for the man he wanted to become. At the gym, the usual faces were missing. But Daniel was there. Alone, maybe, but not aimless. And something clicked. This wasn't about fitness. It wasn't about abs or discipline porn. It was about sovereignty. Over his choices, his body, his reactions. He realized life wasn't waiting for a moment of inspiration. Life was the resistance, and he had to push back. After the workout, soaked and sore, he sat in the locker room and opened Meditations. A line stood out like a whisper in the chaos. You have to assemble your life yourself, action by action. That day, Daniel didn't feel proud. He felt solid, anchored, not because he did something heroic, but because he didn't run. He faced discomfort, and it didn't break him. That was the first real challenge. And he met it, not with motivation, but with a principle. The beginning of any Stoic life is not fireworks. It's a quiet refusal, a choice to rise when it's easier to fall. And that morning, without fanfare or applause, Daniel made his choice. He walked through the rain and found his fire. Chapter 3. The mentor. It was the sixth morning Daniel showed up before sunrise. Same path, same routine. The world still asleep. And yet this time something felt different. At the far end of the park, on a bench most people ignored, sat an old man. Long coat, thick beard, a quiet stillness about him, like the cold didn't reach him. He wasn't looking at a phone, or the sky, or the time. He was simply there, present. Daniel passed him once, then again. On the third morning, the man spoke. "You keep coming back," he said. Daniel slowed. "You watching me?" "No," he said, "but I notice people who move with purpose." Daniel shrugged. "I run to clear my head." The man nodded. "And does it work?" "Sometimes." The man shifted on the bench, pulled out a small leather-bound book, Meditations, Marcus Aurelius. "You're not the first to wrestle with your mind," he said. "The difference is, most people run from it. You seem to run into it." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "Do you always give advice to strangers?" "Only the ones looking for it." A pause. Daniel sat down. And just like that, the mentorship began. The man's name was Caldus, retired professor, former soldier, widower, Stoic, not by profession, but by practice. He didn't give Daniel life hacks, no motivational speeches, just questions, reflections, prompts that lingered long after their meetings ended. What part of today did you let emotions control you? Whose opinion weighed too heavily on your peace? Which of your actions honored your values, not your impulses? Daniel started journaling, every evening, just like Caldus did. He began rising not just early, but ready. Not just to run, but to observe. To respond, not react. Caldus lent him Seneca, then Epictetus, then nothing at all. Because by then, Daniel had started writing his own thoughts. One morning, Daniel asked, "Why do you wake up so early? You have no job, no obligations." Caldus smiled. "Discipline isn't for results," he said. "It's for self-respect. I don't wake early to impress the world. I wake early to prove I still govern myself." Daniel was quiet. "You don't need control over others," Caldus continued. "You need command over yourself. That's what Stoicism teaches. Power without noise, strength without rage, peace without permission." Daniel felt it, a shift, in posture, in thought, in life. He had met a mentor, but more importantly, he had found a mirror, one that didn't flatter, didn't lie, one that showed who he could become if he stayed the course. Chapter 4. The Setback. It happened on a Thursday. Daniel had just finished a presentation he'd spent weeks preparing. Sleepless nights, missed outings, every slide, every phrase, refined with precision. His manager smiled, nodded politely, then said, "We're going with someone else's plan." No explanation, no critique, just dismissed. Daniel sat there, blinking, trying to contain the heat rising in his chest. Later that day, he saw the chosen project, nearly identical to his, except it had someone else's name on it. Stolen. He froze. Fury clawed at him. His hands shook. His throat tightened. His ego screamed, "Say something. Fight back. Don't be weak." He went home in silence. For hours, the storm brewed. He paced, cursed, replayed the betrayal, over and over. Then, around midnight, he pulled out his journal. His pen hovered above the page. What would Marcus do? He remembered Caldus's voice. "You don't control outcomes, only your responses." And from Epictetus, "If someone does wrong, it's because they believe it right. Pity them, do not become them." So Daniel wrote, not about revenge, but about clarity, not about injustice, but about how to remain just. The next morning, he didn't confront the thief. He shook their hand, looked them in the eye, and walked away. Because strength is not in the explosion, it's in the restraint. But that didn't mean the pain disappeared. Doubt crept in. What's the point of discipline if the dishonest still win? Why stay calm in a world that rewards rage? That weekend, Daniel skipped his run, slept in, ignored his journal. He was drifting, the storm inside now a silent fog. Until Sunday afternoon, a note arrived, handwritten, simple, from Caldus. "Virtue is tested in betrayal. justice in injustice, endurance in exhaustion. The Stoic does not hope for an easy life, but the strength to meet a hard one well. No advice, just truth. Daniel read it once, twice. Then he laced up his shoes, stepped outside, and ran. Not away, but back toward who he had chosen to become, in posture, in thought, in life. He had met a mentor, but more importantly, he had found a mirror, one that didn't flatter, didn't lie, one that showed who he could become if he stayed the course. Chapter 5. The Ascent. Monday morning came colder than usual. The city moved the same, honking horns, blurred footsteps, coffee in trembling hands. But Daniel walked slower, more present. He wasn't angry anymore. He was ready. At his desk, he opened a new file. Project, Inner Fortress. Not for his boss, not to be praised, but to build something that couldn't be stolen. A plan crafted with care, grounded in values, forged through discipline. This time, he did it differently. He started arriving earlier, listening more, speaking less. He shared books. Meditations by Marcus, letters from Seneca, passages from Epictetus. He didn't preach. He just left them there, open on his desk. People noticed. First Sophia, the new analyst who always looked tired. Then Malik, who had once mocked his silence. Even Priya, ambitious, always rushed, began pausing at Daniel's desk to ask, "Hey, how do you stay so calm?" He never called them followers, never gave speeches. He simply shared what helped him stand up when he could have collapsed. And slowly, without knowing it, Daniel was becoming what Caldus had once been for him, a quiet center in a noisy world. But storms don't stay away forever. One morning, the company announced a major restructuring. Teams would merge, projects cut, people laid off. The man who had stolen Daniel's work, promoted. Sophia's role, eliminated. And Daniel? He was asked to present a proposal for a job that no longer existed. He smiled, not because it was fair, but because he was prepared. After the meeting, his colleagues looked at him, wide-eyed. "Aren't you angry?" Daniel paused, then said, "Would anger help me lead better? Would rage protect us from change?" No one answered, but Malik nodded. Sophia smiled, and Priya whispered, "You should speak more often." Daniel chuckled. "The Stoics taught me the opposite." Then he stood up, gathered his team, and said, "We won't panic. We'll prepare. They don't define our work. We do. If you want to build something real, let's begin." In that moment, Daniel wasn't just a man facing uncertainty. He was a man carrying others through it. Because the Stoic doesn't just endure the fire, he becomes the torch. Chapter 6. The Reckoning. It was the boardroom. Long, glass table, cold white light, polished chrome chairs that looked more like thrones than tools for conversation. Daniel stood at one end, calm, hands steady, breath controlled. At the other end, Richard Langford, the man who had once buried Daniel's ideas, promoted himself on Daniel's silence, the man who had never once said thank you, only move faster. Daniel wasn't nervous, he was centered. Behind him, Sophia, Malik, and Priya, not subordinates, not followers, teammates. Each one of them had chosen to stand there. Langford broke the silence. "Impressive numbers, Daniel. And yet, I'm not sure this direction aligns with our current strategy." Daniel didn't flinch. "That's because your strategy is reactive, short-term, fear-driven. Ours is built to last." Langford raised an eyebrow, smirked. "Ours? Who do you think you are?" Daniel looked at him, not with anger, not with pride, but with clarity. "I am no one special, but I've done the work. I've led with discipline. And these people, this team, believe in something deeper than profit margins. They believe in legacy." Langford leaned forward. "Legacy doesn't pay the bills." Daniel answered, "No, but it earns loyalty. It builds trust. It creates a culture that does pay the bills, long after you're gone." Silence. One board member whispered something. Another leaned in, nodding. Langford glanced around. For the first time, he wasn't in control, because something had changed. Not the numbers, not the projections, but the man. Daniel had entered this company invisible, quiet, soft-spoken. Now he was undeniable. Not because he fought harder, but because he stood still when others ran. Because he had lived the Stoic code, humble in progress, resolute in pressure, and unshaken in conflict. Langford looked back at him. "You want to lead this team? Fine. Let's see if you can handle the fire." Daniel smiled. "I already have, and I didn't burn." He turned to his team. They nodded. They were ready. Because the real victory wasn't winning the room. It was mastering himself. And now, Daniel didn't need power to lead. He had become power, through discipline, through adversity, through choice. The fire didn't break him. It forged him. Chapter 7. The Resolution. The boardroom was empty now. The echoes of tension faded, replaced by a quiet only the truly resolute could enjoy. Daniel didn't celebrate. He didn't throw a fist in the air or post anything online. He simply returned to his desk. Same chair, same light, same view of the skyline beyond the glass. But inside, everything had changed. He had won something greater than approval, greater than a title. He had won his freedom. Not from the company, from fear, from the hunger for validation, from the need to be seen. For weeks, whispers traveled down corridors like wind through columns. "Did you hear what happened in the boardroom? Langford doesn't speak much anymore. Daniel's team, they've built something different." But Daniel wasn't interested in stories. He was interested in repetition. Every morning he still woke before the sun. He still trained, still read, still wrote. The journal now full of hard questions and harder answers. One morning a knock came at his office door. It was Malik. "Can I ask you something?" he said. "How do you stay so steady?" Daniel paused, looked up. He slid his leather-bound journal across the table. "Read it, then write your own." Malik took it like a sacred object, because in a way, it was. That was the quiet revolution Daniel had started, not of prophets, of people. People who stopped chasing comfort, people who learned to master themselves first. The culture began to shift, not because Daniel demanded it, but because he embodied it. No motivational posters, no forced smiles, just standards, lived, quietly, repeatedly. Sophia started mentoring new hires. Priya built a system to protect deep work time. Malik began writing each morning before checking his phone. One by one, they sharpened each other. Not perfectly, but consistently. That was Stoicism, not a victory march, a discipline, not an identity, a practice. And Daniel? He just kept going, because he knew the truth. There is no final test, no ultimate reward, no applause that lasts. There is only the code, the choice, to rise, to serve, to hold the line, even when no one is watching. That was the resolution. Not fireworks, but fire, burning steady, within. Chapter 8. The End. Years passed, the skyline changed, new towers rose, names faded, roles shifted, but Daniel remained. Not in title, not even in the building. He had moved on. Different city, different desk, same discipline. He now worked from a simple room, windows open to the sea. No more deadlines to chase, no more egos to manage. Just a quiet rhythm, sunrise, breath, work, thought. And every morning, as always, he opened his journal. The leather now worn, pages curled, ink faded, but the words still burned. Control what you can, let go of the rest. He remembered the boardroom, the pressure, the silence, the moment he stopped seeking approval and chose to live by his own standard. That moment had changed everything. He remembered the first cold mornings, when motivation was gone, when he rose anyway. He remembered the fear, and how he learned not to silence it, but to walk through it. He remembered Malik's question, "How do you stay so steady?" And how the answer wasn't in strength, but in surrender. To the process, to the present, to the Stoic path. Now, in the stillness of this new chapter, Daniel understood something he couldn't see before. The journey was never about success. It was about transformation, about becoming the kind of man who could stand alone, the kind of man who didn't need noise or praise or comfort, the kind of man who left behind not footprints, but principles. And perhaps that was the real legacy. Not what he built, but how he built himself. Because everything else, titles, trophies, applause, fades. But character, that endures. As the tide rolled in and the sky turned gold, Daniel wrote one last line in his journal. I did not conquer the world. I conquered myself. He closed the book. No music, no crowd, just a man, sitting in silence, unshaken, unmoved, free, but fire, burning steady within.